Mike, I was very close to, because my wife Elizabeth and I were postdocs at Caltech, and we were very young, and we found the faculty there a little bit too high and mighty for us, and so we spent a lot of time with the grad students, with the theory graduate students. Mike was one, Fred Zachariasen was one, and there were several others. And Mike was always joking, and he was always telling people how it was the Jews who had brought civilization to the world, and he would always have proof of the fact. You know, he would have all kinds of books about that subject, written by various rabbis and so on. It was very funny, and we used to put on just for each other operettas of Gilbert and Sullivan. So we sang together the Mikado and Pinafore and Trial by Jury and all of these things. We had fun. I knew George because he was a student at Carnegie Tech where I was. He was a student of a dear friend named Dick Kutkowski, who died early, and who I'm always sorry he's not around anymore. And George, as I said yesterday, was mature. He was articulate. He spoke English better than most of the other students there. We were all from some kind of Asian land. And so I'd stop in his office once in a while. He shared an office with other students. I stopped there and we would talk. Well, we didn't have big talks, but it was pleasant. And he wasn't my student. I wasn't responsible for him. But he knew that I loved mountains, and of course he was in Aspen. And that's, I knew that. So we talked about mountains. He was telling me how he would go in the summer, he would hire himself to a bunch of wealthy New Yorkers, and he would take them on mountain sheep hunting. And they were allowed one sheep per trip. Once they got a sheep, that was it. He did that, yes.
So tell us about how he talked to you about his idea.
Well, you know, it was very quick. It happened just once. You know, he said, in Aspen there is something called the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies, and I knew that. So far they have been doing nothing but humanities, but they are interested in branching into science of some sort, and since they know I am a physicist and I know people there, they've asked me if I wanted to take a part in organizing some kind of a physics section there. And I have no idea how to do it, he said. And do you think such a thing is possible? And, you know, Mike had been, for years, had been telling me, oh, come, we are not allowed to do physics in the mountains. It would be so much better. I'm forced to do physics in that humid, hot Philadelphia. Otherwise, I don't get paid. I would like to be someplace where it's beautiful, where I can climb once in a while. That's where physics should be done. I'd heard that often enough. So, of course, I told George, yes, I think it can be done. And I'll introduce you to somebody who will be your ally. And it didn't take any time at all. I called up Mike, or I wrote to him, I can't remember which one, there was no email. And I told him, look, there is somebody there who is connected with an institution that has money. and he wants to do physics in the mountains too. And the two of you might be able to get something started. And that was that. So I had the two of them meet. I can't remember where, at my house. Mike probably came to Pittsburgh. I don't remember. Or maybe it was at some physics meeting. But so we talked for a day or so, and George said, okay. No, Mike was absolutely gung-ho. Of course I'm with you. Of course I want to do it. Of course. And so George said, okay, well, there's a man we need to get on board, and that's Bob Craig. I had no idea who Bob Craig was. He was executive director of the Aspen Institute. I found out the day before yesterday that he was a great mountain climber who had gone to K2 with George Bell. I knew George Bell. He was a graduate student of Bethe. I knew George Bell was in graduate school with me. And I'd heard all about that K2 expedition. But the four of us, myself, Mike, George, and Bob, met at Pittsburgh Airport. We wanted to have a meeting. There was no point in having the meeting someplace else in Pittsburgh. There was nothing else for Bob to do in Pittsburgh. We spent the better part of the day at Pittsburgh Airport. Bob flew in and then he flew out. At the end of that meeting, there was Bob, who was the representative of the Aspen Institute, and of course we had to be in touch with him. And then there was George, Mike, and myself, who were a triumvirate, who were going to put together this thing. So yes, I was one of the three. And I was one of the three until sometime in the spring of 1961, when I was thinking about leaving for France. I left for France on June 1st. And that was it. And they knew that. I told them that. And by that time, I had asked Lincoln Wolfenstein. George was too much of a student to be able to do much about a physicist, but Mike knew a lot of good people in Philadelphia, people like Primakov, etc. I knew a lot of good people, so it was up to us to collect the physicists, and we realized we needed a board. We needed a supervisory board, and the first person we asked to be on the board was Lincoln, because he had been my office mate, and I had enormous esteem for him. He was so sure. He was somebody that you could trust. He was totally straight, and he was cool. He would talk to you, and he didn't have that passionate tone that I always have. He talked to you in a very even tone always, until it came to Nixon or the Vietnam War, and then he went crazy. But that's okay. So I asked Lincoln, and Lincoln said, yes, that sounds very interesting. I was surprised because I didn't know whether there was any relationship between Lincoln and the mountains. But Lincoln was a true physicist from the beginning, a man who really ate and drank physics and wanted physics to be his physics, and knew the good people, and did not make waves, but did very, very good work. He was well known from the first paper he wrote.
So let me ask you another question about Mike and Lincoln, because you brought them into the picture. Would you say how you view the necessity and importance and outcome also of bringing in Mike and Lincoln?
Well, they played two very different roles. Mike is a pusher, and he's a believer, and he follows what he wants to the limit, and he is also an entertainer, and people like to be with him because it's always fun, and so there was no doubt that he was going to do an enormous amount of work to get what he wanted. And he was also quite sensible as far as approaching people. He knew much better than I would have how to approach people so that they understood that the kind of thing he was talking about, how serious it was, how important it was. No, this was not a joke. This was not just a boondoggle in the mountains. No. He knew all that very well. He was a smart guy. Mike was essential because of that. Everybody was essential. George was essential, Bob was essential, Mike was essential. And Lincoln was essential because he was respected. His name was known. It was known that he had done excellent work. It was known that he never fooled down, that if he made a statement about weak interactions, that was the way it was. Today, he was up to date, and he knew what was going on in physics. He knew everything that was going on in his field. So a very, very dependable physicist, and very pleasant. So beginning around the spring of 1961, I wasn't in the loop anymore because I was too busy getting ready for my trip to France, which lasted 15 months, basically from June 1st, 1961 to September 1st, 1962. And in France, I was very busy. I didn't think about Aspen. I remember getting a letter from Jim Langer saying, yes, he was going. And I got a letter from another friend whose name was Norman Austin, who went in 62 and came back in 1963 also, just like Jim. When I came back in 1963, I got back in touch with Mike and George, and things were different. Things had been running, and there was some experience to go on. And I was just one of the boys. I wasn't a starter anymore. The work had been done, and obviously they'd done an enormous amount of work, which I never did and probably would have been incapable of doing. I would have done something, but not as well as they did.
So what did you do?
I was put in charge of assigning houses to people. So we had a bunch of apartments here and there in various parts of Aspen, and we were supposed to decide who was going to sleep where. And that's a very sensitive job, and you were supposed to sound like you had enough authority that they didn't have any right to complain. But on the other hand, if they had a real reason to complain, you wanted to hear the complaints. And I did that. I believe it was Sally Mansimer who was the secretary that particular summer.
She didn't start till 64.
Are you sure?
I'm quite sure.
Because I do remember Marcy very well. And so it was Marcy then. It was Marcy who was doing it, and I was telling her things like, well, this guy is really a famous physicist. We should try to do a little bit better for him, otherwise it won't look good. Things like that. Those are two single people, and they know each other. We're going to put them in the same condo, stuff like that. But then it came to Bethe. And Bethe none of us had any idea, not me, not Mike, not George, as far as I know, that Bethe already knew and loved Aspen, which apparently he did. We had no idea. And so we were scared to death of being responsible for making Bethe happy. And I remember trying to impress on Marcy. Marcy, you know, this is one of the top physicists in the whole world. You know, this is somebody that we must make happy, otherwise we are finished. I told that to her several times. And that was really my feeling. You know, if Bethe likes it, he's going to help us, he's going to give us money, he's going to tell about us in the right places, including the NSF, etc. But if he doesn't like it, so I don't remember what kind of house Bethe ended up with, but he was very happy apparently. And I went on a hike with him and he was very happy. The last time I came was in 1965 with my family, including Harold. And I never came to the Center for Physics since. I've been in Aspen since, but not to attend any program of the Center. And you might legitimately ask me, how come, since I didn't come for 41 years. And there are a number of reasons for that. I hope you'll bear with me. And one reason is that every summer I kept going back to Europe. And I went back to Europe for two reasons. One is that I had become pretty high on the list of well-known nuclear physicists, and because I did a good job at meetings and being a rapporteur and things like that, I was very much in demand. Practically every nuclear physics meeting or summer school would ask me to come. And there is no year that there wasn't some meeting in Europe or some summer school in Varennes or in Les Ouches where they wanted me. So I went back to Europe every summer, and on top of that, I had a French family whom I loved and who loved me, and I really enjoyed being there with my family too. So there was not much time left to come to Aspen, which I would have liked to do. But now I'm going to tell you why there was zero time left to come to Aspen. It's because back before all of this started, I had sworn to myself that I was going to go back every summer and backpack in the Sierra Nevada. I had already adopted the Sierra Nevada as my mountains. And I love the Sierra Nevada. You know, my heart is there. It's my spiritual home. And I know them from top to bottom. I've been everywhere many times. I have spent probably more than a whole year in a little tent in the high country of the Sierra Nevada, 20 miles from the trailhead. And I led trips in the Sierra Nevada year after year after year after year, mostly with friends and my family, but a couple times with the Sierra Club. And as I said, they are my mountains. And I had so much on my plate already, I couldn't adopt another range of mountains, and that's all there is to it. The times I'd been in Aspen, I'd loved the mountains here. But you can only have so many mountains.
That's perfect.
And there is one more reason, which is actually a major reason. Let me tell you something else first. I love music. I absolutely love music. And people know that I love music. And they always want to play music for me when we are having dinner or when we are having a meeting or when we are working together. I can't. I cannot listen to music and do something else. It's impossible because I love music so much that you play music for me, some music that I like, and I'm gone. Well, it's the same for the mountains. And actually, the business of mixing mountains and physics, which was so dear to the originators of the center, including me, turned out not to work for me. Because I found out that when I was sitting in my office right here in Stranahan Hall, I dreamt about the mountains. I dreamt about either yesterday's hike or tomorrow's hike or next year's hike. I was not that good, and I heard yesterday how much work got done at the workshops in Aspen. The only way you could get me to work at the workshops in Aspen if you would obliterate the mountains so I can't see them.